Entire cities, with harbors once filled with merchant ships, now rest silently on the ocean floor. This is not fantasy, but a truth uncovered by modern science. We are exploring 26 drowned harbors, a discovery that is actively redrawing the map of the ancient world. By the end of this journey, you will see human history in an entirely new light through the lens of these forgotten ports. We will reveal how a legendary Egyptian gateway vanished beneath the Mediterranean and what ghostly church bells still ring from under the North Sea. This is a story written in silt and stone, waiting for us to read it. How many other lost worlds do you think are still hidden beneath the waves? A research vessel glides across a placid sea, its hull sending silent, invisible pulses of sound into the depths below. This is the quiet revolution of marine archaeology, a field where sonar technology has become our most powerful time machine. These are not simple depth finders. Multibeam and side-scan sonar systems work by emitting fans of sound waves that travel down to the seafloor. When these waves hit an object, they bounce back. By meticulously measuring the time it takes for each echo to return, powerful computers can construct breathtakingly detailed, three-dimensional maps of a world we cannot see. The true magic lies in the resolution. These scans are so precise they can tell the difference between a natural ridge of rock and the straight, deliberate lines of a man-made breakwater. They reveal the ghostly outlines of building foundations, the subtle contours of ancient canals, and even the distinct shapes of shipwrecks resting in the silt for centuries. It is like developing a new sense, one that allows us to see through the murky water and layers of sediment to read the stories written on the drowned landscape. This technological leap is as profound for ocean exploration as the invention of the telescope was for astronomy. It has unveiled an entire hidden universe right here on our own planet. Yet experts like Dr. Helen Farr remind us that we have surveyed less than 20% of the ocean floor. The potential for discovery is almost limitless. With this data, we can perform a kind of digital magic, virtually draining the seas to walk through these lost cities and understand their original layout and purpose. How many chapters of human history are still missing simply because they lie beneath the waves? The first answers are now coming into focus, revealing the initial glimpses of our 26 lost worlds. Beneath the calm surface of Aperlae Bay, the seafloor tells a story of a shattered world. This is the sunken city of Heracleion, a place once thought to be mere legend. For over 1,000 years, it was Egypt's grand gateway, a bustling port where Greek merchants and Egyptian priests mingled long before the rise of Alexandria. Its discovery in the year 2000 was not a matter of chance. A team led by the underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio used a technological trident, side-scan sonar to map the vast cityscape, and a nuclear magnetic resonance magnetometer to detect buried objects. The first images that returned from the abyss were breathtaking. The scanners revealed colossal statues of pharaohs standing guard in the perpetual dark, their stone faces turned upward as if still waiting for the sun. They found the ruins of a massive temple dedicated to the god Amun-Jereb, the spiritual heart of the city. The seabed was littered with the ghosts of commerce, the remains of 70 sunken ships and countless ancient anchors, a silent fleet frozen in time. These physical anchors confirmed the writings of ancient historians who spoke of a wealthy, powerful city that had simply vanished from the earth. The harbor itself was a marvel of ancient engineering, a network of canals and stone quays showing this was a meticulously planned hub for international trade. So what could cause such a powerful city to fall? The evidence points to a perfect storm of disasters. The city was built on unstable clay soil. Experts believe a combination of soil liquefaction, where the ground literally turns to liquid during an earthquake, and a slowly rising sea level, perhaps punctuated by a catastrophic tsunami, caused the entire landscape to collapse and sink. From this watery grave, divers have recovered more than just stone. Gold coins and the remnants of ceremonial barges speak to a city of immense wealth and deep religious significance. The discovery of Heracleion fundamentally challenges our historical narrative. It was not Alexandria alone that commanded the Mediterranean trade, but a more complex and older network, with Heracleion as its vibrant central node. This sunken metropolis is a powerful reminder that even the most legendary and powerful cities are not immune to the forces of nature. It sets a dramatic stage, proving that the map of the ancient world is not yet complete, and that other drowned harbors are waiting to share their stories. While Heracleion reveals the collapse of a grand empire, the waters near Greece hold a secret from a far more distant past. Pavlopetri is not merely a sunken city, it is a ghost from the Bronze Age, a place whose streets were walked over 5,000 years ago. Today, those same streets are navigated by schools of fish, the only residents of the world's oldest known planned underwater city. Discovered in 1967 by oceanographer Nicholas Fleming, its true complexity was only unlocked decades later through the detailed sonar mapping by the University of Nottingham. The scans revealed a layout that feels almost modern, a blueprint for urban life from a time we thought was shrouded in myth. The city plan shows two-story buildings with distinct rooms, quiet courtyards, a network of streets, and even chamber tombs for its dead. A sophisticated system of water channels and drains runs through it all, proving this was not a haphazard village but a carefully engineered settlement. This entire city predates the Parthenon by millennia, offering a stunningly clear window into the Mycenaean civilization that Homer would later write about. Its harbor was strategically placed within a protective bay, a natural shelter that made it a perfect hub for maritime trade. Archaeologists believe this was a bustling center for the exchange of valuable goods like textiles and olive oil, connecting this small Greek coast to a vast network of Aegean trade routes. The drowning of Pavlopetri was not a single catastrophic event. Instead, it was a slow, inexorable surrender to the sea, likely caused by the coastal subsidence and relentless earthquakes that shaped this region. This gradual sinking was a tragedy for its inhabitants, but a gift to archaeology. The same silt that slowly claimed the city acted as a perfect preservative, sealing organic materials like wooden tools and pottery in a time capsule. This level of preservation is extraordinarily rare and provides an unparalleled record of daily life in the Bronze Age. Pavlopetri fundamentally rewrites our understanding of early urbanism. It shows that the drive for complex city planning, for organized trade and community living, was flourishing on coastlines we can no longer see. This sunken city is more than a ruin, it is a preserved moment, a silent testament to a sophisticated world that existed long before the glory of classical Greece. The ghostly toll of church bells is said to still echo from beneath the cold waters of the North Sea. This is Dunwich, a place often called Britain's Atlantis, and its loss is not measured in millennia but in centuries. Where the waves now roll, a bustling medieval port once stood, a rival to London itself. It was a town of around 3,000 souls with a prosperous harbor, multiple churches, and a powerful fleet. Then the storms came, a series of brutal tempests in the 13th and 14th centuries, combined with relentless coastal erosion, began to tear the town apart. Entire streets, monasteries, and homes crumbled from the cliffs and slid into the churning water, a slow-motion catastrophe that unfolded over generations. Modern sonar surveys have finally given a voice to this sunken history. The scans paint a heartbreakingly clear picture of the drowned town, its street layouts and the stone foundations of All Saints' Church perfectly mirroring the records in old manuscripts. This was no minor settlement. Dunwich was a critical hub for the lucrative wool trade and home to a fishing fleet that powered the local economy. Even today, the shifting sands on the beach below the cliffs act as a reluctant curator, occasionally revealing fragments of pottery or even human bones, poignant reminders of the community that was lost. The story of Dunwich is a powerful and sobering lesson. It demonstrates with brutal clarity how even the most established and powerful coastal communities are utterly vulnerable to the forces of nature and a changing climate. This was a medieval disaster that serves as a stark historical parallel to our own modern concerns about rising seas, forcing us to wonder which of our own coastal cities might one day share its fate. The slow, patient erosion of Dunwich stands in stark contrast to a city erased in minutes. Port Royal was not just a harbour, it was a legend of lawlessness, a pirate capital so infamous it was called the wickedest city on earth. By the late 1600s, this Jamaican boomtown was the bustling, brutal heart of the Caribbean, a place where fortunes were made and lost in the countless taverns that lined its streets. It served as the main base for English privateers and outright pirates who plundered Spanish galleons, funneling unimaginable wealth through its port. The city was a strategic linchpin for the British Empire, a hub of naval power and trade that made it one of the most important and wealthiest European settlements in the Americas. But its foundations were fatally flawed, built on a precarious spit of sand. On the morning of June 7, 1692, the ground began to shake with a violence no one could comprehend. The earthquake liquefied the unstable sand, turning the very earth into a churning, sinking sea. In a matter of moments, 2/3 of the city simply slid into Kingston Harbour. Brick buildings, bustling streets, and over 2,000 souls were swallowed by the water, a catastrophic loss that resonated across the Atlantic. For many who heard the news, this was not a random geological event. It was divine retribution for the city's celebrated sinfulness. The disaster preserved a moment in time with chilling precision. Underwater archaeologists have found a city frozen at the instant of its death. They have explored structures with walls still standing, discovering rooms where life was violently interrupted. A pewter plate sits on a table, as if waiting for a meal. Most hauntingly, a pocket watch recovered from the Silt had its hands stopped at 11:43, forever marking the moment the world ended for Port Royal. The sudden, deep burial in an oxygen-poor environment created a perfect time capsule, preserving wood, leather, and even fabric that would have normally rotted away centuries ago. This gives us an unparalleled window into the daily life of a 17th-century colonial port, from the grandeur of its forts to the simplicity of a sailor's tavern. The story of Port Royal is a brutal reminder of nature's power to rewrite human geography in a single, violent stroke. It forces us to ask what other vibrant centers of commerce and culture have vanished not with a slow fade, but in a single, earth-shattering gasp. The ruins of Port Royal preserve the exact moment of a city's death, but some drowned places tell a much slower, more patient story of loss. Off the coast of Israel, the sea holds a secret 9,000 years old. Atlit is a Neolithic village, a sprawling settlement from a time before pottery or metal, now resting on the seabed. Discovered by marine archaeologist Heracleion, this is not just a collection of artifacts, it is the ghost of an entire community. The stone foundations of houses are still there, arranged in a deliberate plan that speaks of a settled, organized society. Most haunting is the ritual site, a circle of massive megalithic stones standing upright in the water, a place of ceremony and community gathering now visited only by fish. Here, the ancient world reveals a darker intimacy. The skeletal remains of its inhabitants show the earliest known evidence of tuberculosis, a disease that walked among them even as they built their world. This society was a sophisticated blend of old and new. They were farmers, as proven by the discovery of processed grains like emmer wheat and barley, and the bones of domesticated sheep, goats, and cattle. Yet they also relied deeply on the sea, constructing a harbor for their canoes and small craft to support a robust life of fishing and coastal trade. The most telling feature of all is a stone-built freshwater well, dug deep to reach the water table. This was a community actively fighting back against the encroaching sea, managing their essential water supply even as the ocean level slowly, inexorably rose. This was not a sudden catastrophe, but a long retreat in the face of a global phenomenon, the post-glacial sea level rise that drowned coastlines across the world after the last ice age. Atlit Yam completely shatters the image of early humans as simple, wandering hunter-gatherers. This was a complex, thriving village, a testament to the human drive to build a permanent home, to farm the land, and to sail the sea. Their story, preserved in the silent deep, is a profound reminder that our own modern conflict with rising oceans is not a new chapter in human history, but a very, very old one. The same relentless sea that claimed a Neolithic village also swallowed the ports of a far grander civilization. On the other side of the Indian subcontinent, the Indus Valley civilization built one of the world's first great urban cultures, a society of sprawling, meticulously planned cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. For a long time, we pictured them as a people of the river, their genius confined to the Indus plains. But the coastline tells a different story, one written in submerged stone and ancient legend. The city of Dwarka in Gujarat is central to this mystery. Ancient Sanskrit texts describe it in vivid detail as a magnificent, fortified port city built by the deity Lord Krishna, a place of immense wealth with hundreds of gates which ultimately sank into the sea upon his death. For centuries, this was considered pure mythology. Then marine archaeologists began to explore the waters off the modern city of Dwarka. What they found was startling. The seabed is littered with massive stone blocks, some weighing hundreds of kilograms, along with stone pillars, anchors, and layers of pottery. These are not random natural formations. The sheer size and worked nature of these stones point to a significant, man-made settlement that met a catastrophic end. Further evidence comes from the Gulf of Combat, where sonar surveys have detected what appear to be vast geometric structures on the seabed. The scans reveal long, straight lines that look like walls and the outlines of a complex drainage system, eerily similar to the sophisticated urban planning we see in the known Harappan cities on land. The debate over these underwater features is intense. Some geologists argue they could be natural formations, while archaeologists point to the recovered artifacts, like pieces of pottery and worked wood, that have been carbon dated to dates that challenge our traditional timelines. Whether these specific structures are confirmed or not, the cumulative evidence is compelling. It paints a picture of a civilization that was far more maritime-oriented than our history books ever suggested. These potential harbors were not isolated outposts. They were likely key nodes in the Harappan maritime network, a web of trade that connected the Indus Valley to distant Mesopotamia, where records speak of ships from a place called Meluha bringing in exotic woods, carnelian beads, and ivory. The demise of these coastal centers seems to follow a familiar, tragic pattern. A combination of factors likely conspired against them: shifts in the course of the Great Indus River, which would have strangled their agricultural heartland, tectonic activity that may have caused land to subside, and the same global sea level rise that slowly drowned Atlit Yam thousands of years earlier. The search for these lost harbors is actively redefining the map of ancient India. It suggests that the cradle of this civilization was not just the river valley, but the coastline itself, a world of bustling ports and ocean-going ships that has completely vanished from view. This discovery invites a profound question. If the sophisticated Indus Valley had a forgotten maritime empire, how many other trading cultures have we missed, their harbors now silent and buried beneath the waves? The clear blue waters of Crete conceal a city cut in two. Olous was not merely a port, it was a city ingeniously built upon a narrow spit of land, a natural isthmus that created two sheltered harbors on either side. This strategic location made it a maritime powerhouse, a major Dorian city that rivaled the legendary Knossos in influence. It minted its own coins and forged treaties with powerful neighbors like Rhodes, its wealth flowing from trade in Cretan olive oil, wine, and fine pottery across the Aegean Sea. Today, the isthmus that defined the city is gone, submerged by the sea. What was once a bustling main street is now a channel for modern sailboats, gliding directly over the ancient ruins. Snorkelers floating on the surface are treated to a ghostly panorama, looking down through the crystal water at the skeletal remains of a lost world. They can trace the lines of sturdy city walls, drift over the foundations of homes and public buildings, and even hover above a famous mosaic floor, its intricate patterns still perfectly preserved on the seabed. This is not a site locked away in a museum. It is an underwater archaeological park where history is experienced firsthand. Sonar mapping and aerial surveys have confirmed the scale of this loss, revealing a vast, grid-like street plan beneath the waves that speaks of meticulous urban design. The city did not fall in a single cataclysm but succumbed to a slower, more insistent enemy. The land here is geologically restless, part of the seismically active Hellenic arc. A combination of tectonic subsidence, where the land slowly sinks, and the relentless rise of sea levels gradually flooded the city, its residents eventually forced to abandon their homes to the advancing sea. Olous stands as a stunningly accessible monument to the fragile relationship between human civilization and the shifting earth, a vibrant community turned into a snorkeler's paradise. It makes you wonder, if such a well-planned city could be so completely reclaimed by the water, what greater ports might lie in deeper, darker waters, far from the reach of any casual swimmer. The water here tells a story of slow surrender. On the coast of ancient Lycia, the ruins of Aperlae do not lie in a single, sunken graveyard, but instead stretch from dry land into the turquoise sea, a city caught in the act of drowning. This was not a sudden cataclysm like Port Royal, but a relentless, creeping invasion that unfolded over centuries. The very ground Aperlae was built upon was sinking, a victim of the tectonic pressures that shape this rugged coastline, while global sea levels continued their slow, inexorable rise. You can walk among the Roman-era city walls on land, and then follow those same stone foundations directly into the water, where they vanish into the deep. The harbor's stone quays and protective jetties, once bustling with trade, now sit several meters below the surface, a silent measure of how much the world has changed. This city's wealth was literally harvested from the sea. Aperlae was a renowned producer of Tyrian purple, a dye so valuable in the ancient world it was worth its weight in silver. The source was the murex shellfish, and the submerged stone vats used to process thousands of these creatures are still visible on the seafloor, a ghostly industrial complex. The smell of this industry must have been overwhelming, a pungent mark of prosperity that clung to the city. Archaeological surveys reveal a community that refused to give up easily. They mapped a necropolis for their dead, multiple churches, and a sturdy Byzantine fortress, evidence of a society that persisted for generations even as the water lapped at their doors. In a poignant act of defiance, the residents built seawalls, trying to hold back the inevitable, but the sea always won, slowly reclaiming the land they fought so hard to keep. Aperlae is a powerful case study in long-term adaptation and eventual retreat, a slow-motion disaster that feels eerily relevant today. It shows us that a community's end is not always a dramatic collapse, but can be a quiet, generational fading. This narrative of a losing battle against the waves sets the stage for even more immense geological forces, where the very ground beneath entire cultures was not just sinking, but violently torn apart. King Herod the Great demanded a harbor where nature insisted there should be none. On a stretch of Israeli coast with no natural bay, he commissioned Sebastos, a deep water port that was an engineering marvel of the ancient world. This was not just a construction project, it was a declaration of power built using a revolutionary Roman technology, hydraulic concrete. This was a magical substance, a mortar that could actually set and harden underwater. Enormous wooden forms were sunk into place and then filled with this slurry, creating colossal breakwaters and quays right from the seabed up. For decades, Sebastos was a triumph, one of the largest and most impressive artificial harbors in the entire Roman Empire, a bustling gateway that connected Rome to the riches of the East. Its warehouses overflowed with grain, spices, and silks, a critical link in the imperial supply chain, but the very earth beneath it was plotting its downfall. Caesarea was built on a coastline that is slowly, inevitably subsiding, a region also plagued by powerful seismic activity. The magnificent harbor, a testament to human ingenuity, was sitting on a geological fault line in every sense. The same concrete that defied the sea could not defy the sinking land. Sonar maps and underwater excavations tell the story of this collapse in stunning detail. The seabed is a chaotic graveyard of engineering where massive concrete blocks, some as heavy as 50 tons, now lie in a tangled jumble up to 10 meters deep. The precise, orderly quays have been thrown into disarray, shattered by earthquakes and swallowed by the subsiding shoreline. The failure was not just structural, it was economic. As the harbor became increasingly treacherous to navigate, silted up and plagued by submerged ruins, the vital trade routes began to bypass it. The city's wealth evaporated, and this thriving metropolis, once a capital of the Roman province, slowly dwindled into abandonment. The story of Sebastos is a humbling lesson in the limits of even the most advanced engineering. It proves that human ambition, no matter how grand, is ultimately subject to the immense, patient power of the earth. Today, those fallen breakwaters have found a new purpose, serving as a vast artificial reef teeming with marine life, a new kind of ecosystem born from the skeleton of a fallen titan. This pattern of geological betrayal raises a compelling question. If a harbor built with Roman brilliance could be so thoroughly defeated, what fate awaited other ports resting on even more unstable ground? The story of a single drowned city is profound, but our next discovery expands the map to a scale that is almost unimaginable. We are no longer searching for one harbor, but for an entire lost continent. During the last ice age, a vast landmass known as Sunderland connected the islands of Java, Borneo, and Sumatra to the mainland of Southeast Asia. This was not a narrow land bridge, but a sprawling subcontinent, a continuous plain of forests and rivers twice the size of modern India. For thousands of years, it was home to thriving populations of early humans and animals, a complete world that has now completely vanished. When the great ice sheets melted, the sea did not just rise, it poured in, relentlessly flooding this enormous expanse over centuries. The Java Sea and the Strait of Malacca, some of the busiest shipping lanes in the world today, now cover what was once a vibrant, inhabited landscape. Modern sonar scans of this seafloor have begun to trace the ghost of this lost world. They reveal the deep, winding channels of ancient river systems, the dramatic scars of long-drowned waterfalls, and the tantalizing, regular shapes that could be the foundations of early human settlements. These were not merely ports, but entire coastal plains that supported one of humanity's greatest journeys, the migration of people from mainland Asia all the way to Australia. The loss of Sunderland around 14,000 years ago was not a single event, but a slow-moving continental catastrophe. It would have displaced countless communities, radically altered regional weather patterns, and completely redrawn the map of the world. The scale of this loss was so immense that some researchers hear its echo in the ancient flood myths found in cultures across Southeast Asia, stories of a great deluge that swallowed the land. The potential for discovery here is staggering. Somewhere on that submerged shelf could lie evidence of the world's first seafaring cultures, the very first ports from which humans launched themselves across the open ocean. Yet the sheer depth and vast area make systematic exploration a monumental challenge. This is the grandest possible scale of coastline redrawing, a reminder that the familiar archipelago we see on maps today is just a temporary snapshot. The drowning of Sunderland proves that entire worlds, not just cities, can be lost to the waves. This epic inundation sets the stage for finding smaller, but no less significant, harbours that were swallowed as this vast continent fractured into islands. The debate over Yonaguni is a battle between geology and history, fought over a submerged stone labyrinth off the coast of Japan. Discovered by a diver in 1986, the Yonaguni Monument is a colossal structure, a series of immense sandstone terraces that descend into the deep blue. At first glance, it looks utterly artificial. Your eyes trace what seem to be perfect staircases with sharp 90-degree angles. You can make out what appears to be a wide triangular archway, and even a massive flat platform that some have called a plaza or a stadium. Most haunting of all is a feature that many interpret as a carved human face, a silent, stony visage gazing out from the depths. For researchers like Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist who has spent decades studying the site, these features are not random. He points to the sheer accumulation of precise, geometric forms, arguing they are the ruins of a 10,000-year-old city, a sophisticated culture that vanished when rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age consumed their world. If he is correct, it would mean a chapter of human civilization in the Pacific, one capable of monumental architecture, has been completely erased from our history books. This would not be a mere village but a metropolis, forcing a complete rewrite of our understanding of ancient human migration and ingenuity. The opposition, led by many mainstream geologists, offers a powerful counter-argument. They see not the hand of man, but the relentless, patient force of nature. The region is one of the most seismically active on Earth, and the sandstone here is crisscrossed with natural vertical fractures and horizontal bedding planes. Over millennia, powerful underwater currents have exploited these weaknesses, eroding the rock in a way that can produce astonishingly straight edges and flat surfaces. What looks like a carved staircase could simply be a section of stone that broke away along its natural fault lines. The so-called face could be a classic example of pareidolia, the human brain's tendency to see familiar patterns where none exist. Detailed sonar maps have given both sides more data, but no definitive proof. The scans show the topography in breathtaking detail, revealing the sheer scale of the terraces and the complexity of the formations, yet they cannot settle the core debate. Are those parallel grooves and sharp indentations the result of ancient tools, or simply the scouring marks of sand and water over endless centuries? The site sits in a tectonic battle zone where earthquakes constantly reshape the landscape, further blurring the line between a built structure and a naturally shattered one. Yonaguni does not offer easy answers. It stands as a profound and enduring mystery, a Rorschach test on the ocean floor. It forces us to confront a fundamental question: how do we truly know the hand of humanity when we see it, especially when it is submerged for millennia? This enigma reminds us that our planet is capable of creating its own grand, deceptive art, and that the most compelling lost worlds are sometimes the ones we cannot definitively prove ever existed. The deep, dark waters of the Black Sea guard a secret that could rewrite our oldest stories. Here, a submerged shoreline lies hundreds of feet down, a ghostly bathtub ring marking a coastline that vanished in a cataclysm. The theory proposed by scientists William Ryan and Walter Pittman suggests that around 7,600 years ago, this was a fertile, freshwater lake, its shores dotted with thriving Neolithic farming villages. Then, as the world warmed, the rising Mediterranean Sea finally overpowered the natural dam of the Bosphorus Strait. What began as a trickle became a thunderous, unstoppable torrent, a roaring waterfall hundreds of times more powerful than Niagara, crashing into the basin below. This was not a slow rise, but a violent, terrifying deluge that may have raised the shoreline by as much as 6 inches per day, swallowing the coastal plains for over a mile each week. Can you picture the sheer scale of that displacement? The generations of farmers forced into a desperate, running retreat from a wall of salt water that was consuming their world. The legend of a great flood, found in the Epic of Gilgamesh and later in the Book of Genesis, suddenly feels less like myth and more like a shared, traumatic memory of this very event. Sonar surveys led by oceanographer Robert Ballard have given this theory a physical form. His team mapped that ancient shoreline, and their remote-operated vehicles glimpsed what looked like the remains of a wooden structure and stone tools on the seafloor. The most tantalizing clue of all is the anoxic nature of the Black Sea's depths. Below a certain level, the water is completely devoid of oxygen, an environment where wood, rope, and even the most delicate organic materials can survive for millennia without rotting. This means that if those Neolithic villages and their simple harbors for reed boats are down there, they could be preserved in a state of near perfection, a pristine time capsule from a forgotten agricultural society. This would make them the oldest drowned harbors ever discovered, predating the pyramids of Egypt by thousands of years. The debate is far from settled, with critics arguing the flooding was more gradual. Yet the hypothesis stands as a powerful testament to how a single, dramatic geological event can not only redraw a coastline but potentially erase entire cultures from our collective memory, leaving only echoes in our most ancient tales. This search for a lost world beneath an inland sea compels us to look at other enclosed waters, where similar histories might be waiting in the silent dark. But a harbor does not need an angry ocean to meet its end. Some of the most prosperous ports were not drowned, but slowly buried alive by the very land that sustained them. This was the fate of Sybaris, a legendary Greek colony on the instep of Italy's Boot, a city so synonymous with wealth and pleasure that its name gave us the word Sybaritic. Its people were said to sleep on beds of rose petals, and their obsession with luxury was matched only by their commercial genius. The source of all this wealth was its harbor, a bustling gateway for trade across the Mediterranean. Yet the geography that made it rich also sealed its doom. Sybaris was built on a vast, flat floodplain at the mouths of two rivers, the Crati and the Sybaris. This was its Achilles heel. For centuries, these rivers carried down immense loads of silt from the uplands, depositing it in a slow, relentless deluge across the coastal delta. The harbour, once deep enough for merchant galleys, began to shoal. Season after season, year after year, the silt accumulated, clogging the waterways and pushing the coastline farther and farther out to sea. The city's lifeline was being strangled by mud. This was a different kind of coastline change, not a retreat before the waves, but a slow, grinding advance of the land itself, reclaiming what was once water. The economic impact was catastrophic. As the harbour grew too shallow for ships, the trade routes that were the city's lifeblood simply withered away. Its wealth evaporated and its power faded, leaving it vulnerable to its rivals. The city was eventually destroyed and abandoned, its precise location lost to history for centuries. It was not found by divers, but by archaeologists drilling into the earth. The ruins of Sybaris do not lie beneath the waves, but are entombed several meters below the modern ground level, discovered through painstaking core sampling and ground-penetrating radar. These technologies revealed a city frozen in silt, a stack of settlements built one on top of the other, as the rising plain forced each new generation to build on the rubble of the last. The story of Sybaris is a profound lesson in long-term environmental management. The deforestation of the surrounding hills for agriculture and timber accelerated the soil erosion, turning the rivers into thick, silty flows that doomed the harbour. It shows that a port's survival depends on a delicate and often fragile balance with its entire watershed. This is a tale of historical oblivion brought not by a sudden cataclysm, but by a slow, creeping suffocation, a reminder that sometimes the greatest threat to a harbour does not come from the sea, but from the land it calls home. A harbour can be defined not by stone quays, but by the shattered fleet it failed to protect. Near the Japanese island of Takashima, the seabed holds the broken remains of one of history's greatest naval invasions. In the late 13th century, the Mongol Emperor Kublai Khan, ruler of a vast empire stretching from the Pacific to the gates of Europe, twice set his sights on Japan. He launched colossal armadas, hundreds of ships strong, carrying tens of thousands of warriors. Yet on both occasions, in 1274 and again in 1281, legendary typhoons smashed the invasion fleets to pieces. The Japanese saw these storms as a divine intervention, naming them kamikaze, the divine wind, a legend that would echo for centuries. For a long time, that is all they were, stories. Then, in the 1980s, the legend began to take physical form on the seafloor. Using sonar to scan the muddy bottom, archaeologists located a graveyard of ships. Underwater excavations brought up undeniable proof: massive Chinese-style anchors carved from stone, heavy iron swords, and the sturdy timbers of Mongolian vessels. The discovery confirmed the scale of the historical catastrophe, but it also did something more. It began to redraw a forgotten map. The scattered wreckage acts as a series of precise markers, plotting the final positions of Kublai Khan's ambition. By mapping where these ships went down, researchers could trace the ancient shoreline, identifying the precise bays and inlets where the Mongol forces attempted their landings. These invasion beaches have since been transformed, their contours smoothed by centuries of sedimentation and obscured by modern coastal development. The wreck site itself forms a ghost harbour, a temporary and tragic anchorage created in a single, violent storm. It is a submerged monument to a pivotal moment, a failed conquest that ensured Japan's independence and shaped its national identity for generations. This sunken armada reminds us that the ocean floor is a museum of singular events, holding the scattered evidence of great historical turning points. It guides our search toward other harbors forever linked to the ambitions of empire and the fortunes of war. A city of stone floats upon a lagoon, its foundations slowly dissolving into the Pacific. This is Nan Madol, a labyrinth of nearly 100 artificial islands built not on solid earth, but upon a fragile coral reef. The ceremonial heart of the Sordilor dynasty, this place has been called the Venice of the Pacific, a title that only hints at its profound strangeness and ambition. Its harbors were not a single protected bay, but the entire city itself, a network of canals and tidal channels meticulously engineered to be navigated by outrigger canoes. These waterways served as liquid streets, connecting the royal mortuary to the administrative centers and the priestly quarters, all constructed from colossal basalt logs. The construction itself defies easy explanation. How did a society without metal tools or pulleys manage to quarry, transport, and stack these immense prismatic stones, some weighing many tons, to create this aquatic metropolis? The effort speaks of a powerful, centralized authority capable of commanding immense human labor for generations. Yet the very foundation of this architectural marvel is also its fatal flaw. The weight of all that stone is literally causing the coral reef to compact and sink, a process that began centuries ago and continues today. Now, king tides surge through the canals with increasing force, regularly flooding the ancient islets. The silent, patient work of the mangroves further accelerates the decay, their roots prying apart the meticulously placed basalt walls. Nan Madol is not a relic frozen in the distant past. It is a living archaeological site, actively undergoing the same drowning process that claimed so many of the harbors we have explored. It stands as a breathtaking testament to human ingenuity in the face of a challenging environment, and a stark, sobering lesson in the long-term consequences of building in dynamic coastal zones. This slowly submerging city forces a direct and uncomfortable connection between the ancient past and our immediate future. We are not just uncovering history at Nan Madol, we are watching it happen in real time, a poignant reminder that the forces which redrew the ancient coastline are still very much at work today. The same volcanic forces that created the healing thermal springs of Baiae ultimately conspired to drown its decadent shores. Here, in the submerged shadows of the Italian coast, the sprawling villas of Roman senators and emperors now stand as monuments to a sunken luxury. This was the empire's most exclusive resort, a place where the powerful elite escaped the pressures of Rome for a life of hedonistic pleasure. The poet Seneca wrote scathingly of its moral decay, a town where people came not to restore their health but to lose their virtue. The very ground beneath this paradise was a ticking clock. The Phlegrean fields are a supervolcano, a restless caldera that breathes and shifts. Over centuries, a process called bradysism, a slow rising and falling of the land driven by volcanic activity, caused the shoreline to sink by as much as 10 meters. The most coveted real estate in the ancient world, the waterfront palaces with their private docks, were the first to be claimed by the sea. Today, snorkelers gliding over the bay are treated to a surreal spectacle. Sunlight filters down through the clear water to illuminate intricate mosaic floors, their colorful tesserae still arranged in geometric patterns and mythological scenes. Marble statues of gods and nobles stand silently on the seabed, their blank eyes watching the fish swim past the remains of grand colonnades. This is not a scene of destruction, but of serene abandonment. The harbor of Baiae, known as Portus Julius, was more than just a playground. Before the silt and subsidence made it unusable, it served as a monumental naval base for the fleet of Emperor Augustus, a strategic hub that protected the Bay of Naples. Modern sonar mapping has laid bare the full extent of this sunken district, charting the grid of its streets, the outlines of its warehouses, and the sophisticated network of pipes that channeled the hot spring water into private baths. The preservation is so exquisite it feels peaceful, as if the ocean gently pulled a sheet over the city while it slept. Baiae offers a uniquely intimate glimpse into the sheer opulence of the Roman ruling class, their wealth and taste fossilized in this underwater museum. It proves that geological change is an indiscriminate force, one that does not distinguish between a mighty naval port and a pleasure palace. This quiet, beautiful loss of a center of power and pleasure makes the fate of a simple, hardworking fishing village seem all the more poignant and unjust. The Phoenicians built an empire not on vast territories but on the sea itself. As the ancient world's master mariners, their trade networks wove together the entire Mediterranean, from the cedars of Lebanon to the silver of Spain. To fuel these epic voyages, they established a constellation of small, strategic harbors and anchorages, the vital way stations of a maritime superpower. Many of these crucial nodes have simply vanished from the map. At a site like Achziv in modern-day Israel, or on the island of Motia off the coast of Sicily, archaeologists find the subtle clues of sophisticated port facilities now lying partially beneath the waves. The genius of the Phoenician harbor was in its location. They consistently sought out natural protection, tucking their ports behind offshore islands or within the calm mouths of rivers. These very features, so ideal for sheltering ancient ships, made them profoundly vulnerable over the long centuries. River mouths inevitably silt up, and rising sea levels slowly claim low-lying coastal areas and islands. This makes the search for their lost ports an immense challenge. Unlike the grand stone quays of the Romans or the monumental temples of the Greeks, Phoenician harbors were often practical, functional places. They left behind fewer dramatic ruins, forcing archaeologists to become detectives of the subtle. The proof of their existence is not found in towering walls, but in the scattered evidence of their industry: a stone anchor stock wedged in the seabed, the submerged foundation of a simple quay, or the priceless time capsule of a deep-water shipwreck. Each of these discoveries is another piece of a vast, fragmented puzzle. Reconstructing this maritime map is crucial because these humble anchorages were the unsung heroes of ancient globalization. They were the lifelines of a culture that connected Egypt to Mesopotamia and Greece, a civilization that spread the alphabet, the very building blocks of writing, across the known world. The near-total disappearance of these ports from our historical record is a sobering lesson. It shows how completely a maritime culture can fade when the physical infrastructure that supported its existence is lost to the sea. The ghost ports of the Phoenicians whisper a fundamental truth: that history often immortalizes the great destinations, while forgetting the essential, humble way stations that made the entire journey possible. The maritime Silk Road wove a tapestry of trade far more intricate than its overland cousin, a web of sea lanes connecting imperial China to the spice markets of Zanzibar. And just like any great network, its true strength lay not only in the grand destinations, but in the vital, forgotten way stations in between. Places like Suraf on the Iranian coast or Kalhat in Oman were the beating hearts of this system. These were not simple anchorages, but sophisticated transshipment hubs where the rhythm of global commerce pulsed. Here, the massive, deep ocean dhows, their holds filled with Chinese porcelain and silks, would meet the smaller, nimble coastal vessels that carried these treasures into the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea. The entire economy of these cities was built on this transfer, a delicate dance of cargo and currency that made them wealthy beyond measure. But their strategic location, perched right at the water's edge, was also their greatest vulnerability. Sonar scans along these ancient coastlines now reveal the ghostly infrastructure of that lost prosperity. The scans map out the long, crumbled arms of breakwaters that once deflected monsoon storms, the sunken foundations of warehouses that stored the wealth of continents, and the subtle indentations of slipways where ships were built and repaired. These ports did not always fall to a single dramatic disaster. More often, their demise was a slow unraveling. Shifting political winds could redirect entire trade routes overnight, leaving a once bustling harbor eerily quiet. A powerful earthquake could shatter its protective seawalls in an instant, but perhaps the most patient enemy was the land itself. The great rivers of the region, the Tigris and the Euphrates, carried immense loads of silt down from the mountains. Over centuries, this sediment relentlessly pushed the coastline farther out to sea. A port that was once a thriving waterfront city could find itself stranded inland, its magnificent harbor transformed into a barren plain, a ghost town surrounded by sand. The proof of their global reach is pulled from the sea itself. The discovery of delicate Chinese Celadon ceramics and shards of Tang Dynasty pottery from underwater excavations provides a tangible link. These artifacts are silent invoices, confirming that a piece of fine tableware from a kiln thousands of miles away passed through this very port on its journey to a wealthy merchant's home in Baghdad. These cities were the ancient world's ultimate melting pots. In the markets of Suraf, you would have heard a dozen languages, seen goods from 3 continents, and witnessed the exchange of not just spices and silk, but of ideas, religions, and technologies. Their eventual decline was not an end, but a shift. As one port faded, another like Hormuz or Muscat would rise to take its place, a constant, dynamic redrawing of the economic map. The story of these sunken trading posts is a powerful lesson in the fragility of our interconnected world. It shows us that globalization is not a modern invention, and that its hubs, no matter how wealthy and cosmopolitan, have always existed on a knife's edge, vulnerable to the whims of nature, politics, and the slow, inexorable drift of the sand. Far to the north, where the Arctic ice meets the sea, lie the silent ruins of a Viking dream. The Norse settlers who arrived in Greenland during the medieval warm period found not a barren wasteland, but a land of fjords where they could establish 2 thriving communities, the eastern and western settlements. Their harbors were the very heartbeats of these colonies, sheltered inlets that gave them access to the rich seal hunting grounds and cod-filled waters. From these ports, their Nar ships would set sail, laden with walrus ivory and narwhal tusks, precious cargo for trade with mainland Europe in exchange for the iron, timber, and faith that sustained them. This was a society entirely dependent on the sea, and their harbors were their lifeline. Then the world grew colder, the Little Ice Age descended, and the sea itself turned against them. The pack ice began to linger for longer and longer periods, its thick, grinding mass blocking the harbor entrances for months on end. A ship trapped in port is a society cut off, and the lifeblood of trade and communication slowed to a trickle. The changing climate did more than just lock them in. It also reshaped the very coastline they called home. As the massive Greenland ice sheet grew heavier, it pressed the land down, causing a relative rise in sea level. The ruins of their stone and turf farmsteads, once set safely back from the water, now often find themselves at the edge of eroding shores or sinking into newly waterlogged ground. You can walk among these ruins today and see how the sea is slowly reclaiming the foundations of their homes. The archaeological record tells a story of a desperate struggle. The soil, overgrazed by their livestock, began to blow away, making it harder to grow hay to feed their animals through the brutal winters. And with no forests to speak of, they faced a critical shortage of timber. A splintered hull or a broken mast from a treacherous ice-filled journey could not be easily repaired. A stranded ship in a frozen harbor was a death sentence. Their society did not vanish in a single season, but over generations it withered. They were stranded not just by ice, but by their own inability to change. They clung to their European identity, raising cattle and building churches, while the indigenous Inuit people thrived by adapting to the new conditions, hunting seals and whales from kayaks in the icy waters the Norse could no longer navigate. The exact locations of their crucial boat sheds and landing sites are still being pieced together by archaeologists, who use sediment coring and meticulous shoreline surveys to find clues in the changing landscape. The fate of the Greenland Vikings is a haunting lesson. It shows that a harbor is more than just a safe anchorage. It is a complex system dependent on a stable climate and a flexible society. Their story is a powerful, thousand-year-old warning of what happens when a culture, no matter how hardy, fails to adapt to a coastline that is actively turning against it. The legend of the Seven Pagodas was long considered just a story, a poetic myth from the Coromandel coast. Then, in 2004, the Indian Ocean tsunami delivered a terrible, temporary revelation. As the sea dramatically pulled back from the shore at Mahabalipuram, it exposed a secret it had guarded for centuries. For a few brief, haunting moments, locals and officials witnessed the impossible: the clear outlines of man-made structures, rows of large stone blocks, and the skeletons of walls lying on the newly exposed seabed. The ocean had literally drawn back a curtain, offering a fleeting glimpse of a lost world. This visual confirmation spurred a scientific investigation. Marine archaeologists launched sonar surveys and diving expeditions, systematically mapping the area just offshore. The technology confirmed what the legend and the tsunami had hinted at. The seabed for miles was scattered with the ruins of a sprawling complex. They found the remains of a collapsed temple, a long and sturdy stone wall that likely served as a breakwater, and the foundations of numerous other buildings. These were not random stones, they were the architectural signature of the Pallava dynasty, a powerful and artistic kingdom that ruled this region during the 7th and 8th centuries. This was the Lost Port, a major hub in the Maritime Silk Route. From these very docks, Pallava ships laden with fine textiles, brilliant gems, and pungent spices would have set sail for kingdoms across Southeast Asia, carrying the culture and influence of India to far-off shores. The submergence of this great port was likely a slower process than the legend suggests, a gradual surrender to coastal erosion and the same relentless sea level rise that has claimed so many other harbors. Yet the story of Mahabalipuram stands apart because of the power of its oral tradition. For over 1,000 years, through countless generations, the people here kept the memory of the 6 drowned temples alive. They passed down a geographical truth in the form of a myth, a precise record of a cataclysm encoded in folklore. This discovery does more than just add another ruin to our map. It validates the profound historical value of human memory. It proves that our oldest stories are often more than just tales. They are maps, they are warnings, and they are invitations to look again at the world just beyond the shoreline. The murky waters of the Gulf of Combat hold a claim so revolutionary it threatens to shatter our timeline of civilization. During a routine pollution survey in 2001, a team from India's National Institute of Ocean Technology made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the archaeological world. Their sonar equipment had mapped what looked like the grid of a vast, sunken city, nearly 130 feet below the surface. The images appeared to show the ghostly outlines of large, geometric structures, the straight lines of buildings, and even the complex layout of a drainage system, all resting on the seabed. To understand the sheer scale of this claim, you have to picture a metropolis older than the pyramids of Egypt, older than the Sumerian cities of Mesopotamia, a place that would have thrived when much of the world was still in the Stone Age. The potential implications are staggering. It suggests a complex urban society existing thousands of years before we ever thought possible in this part of the world. The controversy ignited not from a lack of evidence but from its profound nature. The team also recovered artifacts from the site, including pieces of wood and pottery, which were subjected to carbon dating. The results came back with dates as old as 9,500 years. If these dates and the sonar images are correct, we are looking at a lost chapter of human history, a civilization that mastered city planning while our ancestors were still learning to farm. This would not just redraw the map, it would force us to rewrite the entire first chapter of the human story. Yet, the very environment that preserved this mystery also guards it fiercely. The Gulf's waters are notoriously turbid, filled with silt that turns them into a blinding, liquid fog. Powerful currents sweep the seabed, making any detailed excavation with human divers a dangerous and nearly impossible task. This lack of clear, verifiable access has fueled intense debate. Skeptics, including many prominent geologists and archaeologists, argue that the sonar images are a classic case of pareidolia, our brain's tendency to see patterns where none exist. They suggest that the straight lines and right angles could be the result of natural geological processes, like the fracturing of sandstone or ancient river channels that carved a deceptively artificial-looking landscape. The recovered artifacts, they caution, could have been carried far from their original location by those same powerful currents, their dates accurate but their context lost, making them unreliable markers of a sunken city. This intense debate is more than just an academic disagreement. It highlights the immense responsibility that comes with exploring the deep past. In the murky world of underwater archaeology, a single sonar image can spark a global sensation, but definitive proof requires a painstaking, often frustrating process of collection and peer review. The Gulf of Combat stands as a powerful cautionary tale, a reminder that our desire to find lost worlds must be tempered by rigorous scientific scrutiny. Whether this site is ultimately proven to be a natural wonder or the cradle of a forgotten civilization, its very existence on our maps of the possible forces a crucial conversation. How much evidence is enough to overturn our understanding of history, and how many other monumental discoveries are waiting in the deep just beyond our reach, challenging us to look again? The wealth of Tartessos was the stuff of ancient legend, a civilization of such immense prosperity that it was noted in the Bible for its silver and praised by Greek historians for its advanced culture. This was the first complex society in Western Europe, a hub of metallurgy and trade that acted as the critical bridge between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean worlds. Its merchants traded precious metals from its rich mines for luxury goods with the Phoenicians and Greeks, creating a cosmopolitan center of power and influence. Then, around 2,500 years ago, it simply vanished from the historical record. The silence was so absolute that Tartessos became a ghost, a name on a map with no physical body. The central question is one of geography. Where was its heart, the harbor that powered this legendary kingdom? The search has zeroed in on the vast, marshy expanse of Doñana National Park in southern Spain. Here, geophysical surveys and painstaking core samples have pulled clues from the deep earth, revealing magnetic anomalies and sediment layers that hint at something profound hidden below the wetlands. These are the ghost signals of a lost world, the potential footprints of a capital city and its port, now buried under centuries of silt and water. the theories for its demise are as dramatic as its disappearance. Some point to a hostile takeover by the rival Carthaginians, seeking to control its lucrative metal trade. Others argue for a catastrophic natural disaster, perhaps a tsunami generated by a distant earthquake that smashed its coastal settlements, or a sudden, catastrophic shift in the local river delta that silted up its harbor and strangled its economic life. The search for Tartessos is a grand historical detective story, a case where every clue is fragmented. Archaeologists must cross-reference vague passages in classical texts with tantalizing local legends and the hard, scientific data from ground-penetrating radar and sediment cores. Finding the main harbor of Tartessos would be more than just locating a sunken dock. It would be like finding the capital of a forgotten empire. It would unlock the secrets of the first great civilization to rise in Western Europe, giving a home to a people who have existed only as a shimmering mirage in our history books. The mystery of this vanished port is the ultimate example of a history forgotten, a once mighty power that disappeared so completely we are still digging through the mud and myth to prove it was ever real at all. A harbor can be choked to death by the very land it serves. On the island of Aegina, just a short sail from Athens, the remains of a once mighty port tell this exact story. For over a century, Aegina was a formidable maritime rival to Athens, its wealth and power anchored in a deep-water harbor on the northeast coast. This was not a simple anchorage, but the heart of a thalassocracy, a sea empire. From here, a powerful navy patrolled the Saronic Gulf, and merchant ships carried the island's famous pottery and bronze work across the Mediterranean. The harbor was a symbol of Aegina's independence and a direct challenge to the rising power of Athens, yet the source of its strength would become the instrument of its demise. To feed a growing population and sustain its economy, the island's lush hillsides were cleared for intensive agriculture, primarily for olive groves and vineyards. With a protective tree cover gone, the soil had nothing to hold it in place. Winter rains washed it down the slopes in thick, brown rivers, carrying it directly toward the coast. Season after season, century after century, this relentless flow of silt poured into the harbor basin. The deep channels that once welcomed warships began to shoal. The bustling waterfront slowly found itself separated from the open sea by a growing, muddy plain. What was once a strategic naval asset became a shallow, useless lagoon. You can stand there today and see the profound transformation. The ancient harbor is now a marshy field, cut off from the sea by a modern road. It is a quiet, almost pastoral scene that completely betrays its tumultuous past. The silting process was a slow-motion strangulation of the city's economic lifeblood. As the harbor became impassable for deep draft vessels, trade routes shifted to the more reliable port of Piraeus, the harbor of Athens. Aegina's influence waned, its power faded, and it was eventually overshadowed by its great rival, a process sealed by its own environmental mismanagement. The story of Aegina is one of the clearest lessons in sustainability from the ancient world. It demonstrates with brutal clarity that a civilization does not need an earthquake or a tsunami to fall. It can simply engineer its own demise by neglecting the delicate balance between the land and the sea. The silt that built up in the harbor was not an act of God, but a direct consequence of human activity, a bill coming due for generations of deforestation. This prompts a sobering question: how many other thriving ports were slowly buried not by the ocean, but by the soil washing down from their own hinterlands? The hunter's spear, pulled from the North Sea mud, was not lost at sea. It was dropped on dry land. This is the haunting truth of Doggerland, a lost continent that once connected Britain to mainland Europe. For the Mesolithic people who lived there, this was not a seabed but home, a vast, low-lying plain of hills, forests, and meandering rivers. Their world was a network of natural harbors, the sheltered lagoons and riverbanks that served as the first landing sites for early boats. These were not ports of stone, but of geography, places where communities gathered to fish, and from which they launched their journeys along a coastline that no longer exists. For decades, fishermen trawling these waters have been the accidental archaeologists of this drowned world, hauling up not just fish, but the bones of mammoths, the antlers of giant elk, and finely crafted flint tools. Each artifact is a message from a world we can no longer see, a place that was slowly, inexorably being claimed by the rising seas. Then, around 6,500 BC, the slow retreat became a panic. Geological evidence points to a cataclysm, a mega-tsunami generated by the colossal Storegga slide, an underwater landslide off the coast of Norway. A wall of water would have smashed into the remaining coastlines, scouring the landscape and flooding the final refuges of the Doggerland people in a single, terrifying event. This was not just a change in the map, it was an apocalypse for the inhabitants, a definitive erasure of their entire world. Today, we are using advanced three-dimensional seismic reflection data to digitally resurrect this lost land. The technology works like a medical scan for the Earth, sending sound waves deep into the seabed to reveal the buried topography. The results are breathtaking, a detailed map of a vanished geography. We can now trace the winding paths of ancient rivers like the Schotten River, see the outlines of its valleys, and identify the lakes and coastlines that defined this prehistoric paradise. These submerged landscapes are the ultimate forgotten ports, the very first gateways used by humans in northern Europe. The story of Doggerland is the most profound of all, a foundational chapter in human history written on a landscape now entirely underwater. It forces us to ask a deeply unsettling question about our own place in the world. If an entire continent, home to generations of people, could be so completely erased from memory and map, what does that say about the permanence of any coastline, including our own? The ancient city of Lucas was a place of two worlds, straddling a narrow spit of land between the open Ionian Sea and a calm, sheltered lagoon. For its founders from Corinth, this was a perfect strategic location, offering two distinct harbors for different purposes. One port faced the unpredictable open water, a gateway for long-distance trade and naval expeditions, while the other offered a safe haven in the lagoon, a protected basin for repairing ships and managing local commerce. This dual identity made Lucas a vital and flexible stop on the busy maritime routes along western Greece. But the geography that gave it life was also its point of greatest vulnerability. The thin isthmus was a fragile tether, constantly under assault by winter storms and the restless tectonic pressures of the region. At some point, the connection was severed. Was it a deliberate act of engineering, an ancient attempt to create a navigable canal that went too far? Or was it the relentless power of a single catastrophic storm, finally scouring a channel through the sandy neck of land? The result was the same. The city was effectively cut in two, its unified urban fabric torn apart by a new stretch of water. Parts of its infrastructure, including quays and building foundations, slowly sank beneath the rising sea level or were abandoned to the encroaching waves. Today, the modern canal of Lefkada carves through the same breach, a permanent reminder of that ancient separation. On either side of this waterway, the submerged ruins of Lucas are still visible, a fractured puzzle on the seabed. You can look into the clear water and see the ghostly outlines of stonework that once connected the two halves of the city, a physical record of a community divided by the very element that gave it purpose. The story of Lucas is a powerful lesson in how a single, dramatic change to a coastline can redefine a city's entire existence. Its harbors did not drown from a cataclysm that sank the land, but from a transformation of the fundamental landscape that left them stranded and obsolete. The fortune of this port was not lost to the sea, but to the disappearance of the bridge between two seas. The final harbor on our journey rests in the shallow, sun-drenched waters of Greece. The ancient port of Epidaurus was not defined by trade or conquest, but by healing. This city was the Lourdes of the ancient world, a place where the sick and suffering traveled from across the Mediterranean to seek cures at its magnificent sanctuary of Asclepius, the god of medicine. Its harbor was the gateway for this pilgrimage of hope, welcoming ships filled with ailing passengers who came to sleep in the sacred precinct, believing the god would visit them in their dreams with a diagnosis and a cure. This thriving center of health and faith was built upon a geological fault line. In the 6th century, the earth convulsed. A single, violent earthquake tore through the region, and a substantial portion of the city, including its vital waterfront, simply dropped into the sea. The collapse was so sudden that the ruins were preserved in a state of suspended animation. Today, snorkelers glide over a breathtaking underwater district. They follow ancient paved roads that lead nowhere, floating above the stone foundations of homes and public buildings. They can trace the lines of the very quays where those hopeful pilgrim ships once docked, all now lying in the clear, shallow water just meters below the surface. This is not a site of slow erosion, but of instant burial. The archaeological record here is a frozen moment from late antiquity, a time capsule sealed by tectonic violence. The loss of the harbor was a catastrophic blow, severing the city's economic and spiritual lifeline in an instant. How could a place dedicated to mending the human body survive when the very ground beneath it was broken? The sunken sanctuary of Epidaurus stands as our last poignant example. It proves that no place, not even one consecrated to healing and divine protection, was safe from the planet's immense and restless power. The silent ruins we have explored are not random tragedies, but chapters in a single, epic story written by the Earth itself. The forces that claimed these 26 harbors are the same ones shaping our coastlines today, a relentless interplay of geology and ocean. The most powerful driver is eustatic sea level rise, the global increase in ocean volume, which for ancient ports came from the melting of Ice Age glaciers, and for our own era comes from anthropogenic climate change. But the land is not a passive platform, it is constantly moving. Isostatic adjustment describes the land rebounding upward after the immense weight of ice sheets is removed, or sinking in other areas, a slow-motion teeter-totter that can locally accelerate or counteract the sea's advance. Then there is the raw power of tectonics, where colliding continental plates can thrust a harbor skyward or send it plunging into the depths in a single, violent shudder. These grand forces are choreographed by the shifting sands, the endless journey of sediment. Rivers carry silt from the mountains and deposit it at their mouths, building deltas that can push the coastline seaward, but this supply can be cut off by dams or changes in land use. Once in the ocean, currents and waves act as a conveyor belt, eroding cliffs in one area and depositing the sand in another, silting up a vital harbor entrance or carving away the land beneath a city. To read this ancient story, scientists become detectives of deep time. They extract core samples from coastal plains, pulling up long tubes of mud that act as a historical record. Within these layers, they find preserved peat from ancient freshwater marshes or the shells of marine mollusks. By using radiocarbon dating on these materials, they can pinpoint the exact moment a marsh was drowned by saltwater or a coastline advanced, allowing them to reconstruct ancient shorelines with remarkable precision. This scientific context transforms our collection of sunken cities from mere mysteries into a crucial, long-term dataset on human resilience. Each harbor represents a case study in societal response. Did the people of Aperlae build seawalls and adapt for generations? Did the rulers of Aegina ignore the silt choking their harbor until it was too late? The fate of these places provides a sobering menu of options for our own era, showing us which strategies lead to survival and which lead to a map marked lost. The relentless processes that buried these ports never ceased, they merely slowed for a time. Now they are accelerating, powered by a warming planet. These 26 drowned harbors are not just relics, they are a mirror, reflecting a future we are now actively creating. These silent ruins form a hidden atlas of human civilization. Our journey across 26 drowned harbors has revealed a world lost beneath the waves, from the ancient foundations of Atlit to the sunken villas of Baiae. These are far more than just ruins, they are vital waypoints on a forgotten coastline, each one challenging the stories we thought we knew. They speak of incredible ingenuity, like the Roman engineers who defied the sea at Caesarea, and of sprawling trade networks that connected continents long before our modern era. Most of all, they testify to the profound vulnerability of human settlements when faced with the immense power of nature. The sonar scans and shifting sands have given us a powerful new lens for viewing our past, proving that history is written not just in old texts, but in the very silt and stone of these submerged landscapes. As our own sea levels continue to rise, these ancient ports stand as both a stark warning and a powerful reminder of our deep and enduring relationship with the coast. The map of antiquity is being actively redrawn before our eyes. With every new discovery, we recover another piece of our collective human heritage. Let these lost cities inspire more than just wonder. Let them spark a renewed commitment to understanding and preserving our fragile world. The next time you look at a map, remember that another one lies just beneath the surface, a world of stories waiting patiently to be read. The story of these drowned harbors is still being written, with new chapters revealed by advancing technology almost every year. This ongoing exploration relies on the dedication of researchers and institutions around the globe. If this journey along forgotten coastlines has captivated you, I urge you to dive even deeper into the mystery. Seek out the incredible work of marine archaeological institutes like the RPM Nautical Foundation, which surveys the Mediterranean, or the University of Southampton's Centre for Maritime Archaeology, a world leader in the field. You can follow their expeditions, read their published findings, and see the latest sonar images as they are released. Consider lending your support to organizations like UNESCO, which works to protect fragile underwater cultural heritage from looting and destruction. These sites are non-renewable resources, and their preservation is a gift to future generations. Now, I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Which of these 26 lost harbors resonated most deeply with you? Was it the sudden tragedy of Port Royal or the slow fade of Aperlae? And do you have any local legends in your own part of the world about towns or cities that vanished beneath the water? Your own stories are a vital part of this global puzzle. If you enjoyed this expedition, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more journeys into the heart of historical mysteries. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss our next adventure into the past. The ocean's secrets are truly endless, and together we can continue the vital work of bringing them to the surface.